So once we've got that down, let's kind of pop down and name that conic. We're going to give each of these examples one of the terms listed above: parabola, circle, ellipse, or hyperbola. And I'm going to verbally walk you through what these are like. And you don't necessarily have to complete the square on these to figure these out. In number one, you could choose to. We could look at that part and we could look at that part. But we know it's not a parabola because we have an x squared and a y squared. We know it's not a hyperbola because the x squared and the y squared are being added to each other. They're not being subtracted to each other. So what we are left with is deciding between a circle and an ellipse. If you look at the coefficients, you have 1x squared and 1y squared. This is going to be a circle because x squared and y squared have the same coefficients, which means that when you complete the square, you're not going to be factoring something out and having a different coefficient in front. Okay. Number two looks pretty much like the second form for a parabola. You have an x squared, but you do not have a y squared. There is no y squared. Number three looks like if you divide the 36 over, you're going to end up with different a squared and b squared values. So it's an ellipse or a hyperbola. They have different coefficients, and if we look without doing that, you can see the x squared and the y squared both have different coefficients. One has a coefficient of 9 and the other has a coefficient of 4. What you're left with is an ellipse or a hyperbola. And if you're guessing it's an ellipse because of that plus sign, you're correct. For number 4, we want to get everything on the same side before we start to evaluate what kind of a conic it is. So let's make that 0 equals 2x plus y squared minus 4y plus 7 minus x squared. And you have a y squared and you have minus x squared. Those opposite signs mean hyperbola. Keep moving down. We've got number 5, and I'm circling the x squared and the y squared terms. They are the same sign with different coefficients, regardless of if it's a positive or negative. If it's the same sign, it's an ellipse, because you could multiply through by a -1 and make those become positive. For number 6, there is no x squared, which makes this one a parabola. For number 7, look at our squared terms again, opposite signs. So that's hyperbola. And for number 8, they're being added and they have the same coefficient, so that's a circle, because you could divide everything through by a 7 and make that look very much like a circle. So here's your homework. Good luck.